Hello, everybody, and welcome to the White Hatter YouTube News Show. I'm Brandon.
I'm Darren.
Let's get into some news topics, shall we?
In the news.
First news topic is Facebook reportedly paid GOP... Meta paid marketing firm for anti-TikTok media campaign.
Doesn't really surprise me, but it's now public, right? But once again, it's the big meta going after a competitor who's taking market share away from them. And, you know, anecdotally, it's been very interesting. This has obviously been going on a while because anecdotally, probably for the past 8 months, I've seen some significant articles in media and campaigns really targeting TikTok in negative ways. And don't get me wrong, there are some challenges with TikTok, right? Like there are. We talk about those in a number of the shows.
With Facebook too.
No, Meta. Remember, they're not Facebook anymore. They're Meta.
Well, they're still Facebook.
They're Meta, right? So, but so this doesn't surprise me. It doesn't. But again, this is why understanding when you're reading articles online, digging deeper as to who's writing the article, where is the article coming from? It's a part of fact checking, and I know we're going to be talking about that later in the show.
Yeah, I mean, this is just gross. So reportedly what happened was Facebook hired a marketing firm to then reach out to smaller local news agencies, and they would promote stories about trends on TikTok and dangerous trends that didn't actually really exist.
Or they started on Meta or Facebook before.
They started somewhere else.
Yeah.
And just ways to just aggressively just smear TikTok's reputation.
Yeah.
So, you know, we see a lot of parent groups, you know, freaking out about, oh, this dangerous thing on TikTok. Well, you know, Facebook, Meta is actually paying for some of those stories that don't actually exist.
And some of those things that were trending on TikTok actually started on Meta or another platform, right? But they were amplified on TikTok.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just
again, it's this is what happens in the corporate world, right? Like your competitors are seen as enemies, and so therefore some corporate entities will go to war. And this is a really good example, right? Because like it or not, TikTok as a company has got a fairly large, significant share, especially when it comes to teens and now adults that are taken away from the Meta platform. And, you know, Meta has something similar to TikTok, doing what TikTok does, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So speaking of fact checking,
Google
adds a new highly cited label focusing on tackling misinformation and highlighting original reporting.
This is a good thing, right?
Yeah, this is actually really good. So how the system is supposed to work, and it's going to be rolled out in the next couple of weeks or so, is original news sources. They're going to get a label, and they're going to be more promoted in in Google searches. So if you're searching something, and let's say there's a big media agency, CNN, Fox, CNET, Mashable, whatever it is, those media sources tend to...
Did you say Fox?
Yeah. They tend to take up smaller news stories from smaller agencies, and then those companies have a huge budget for search engine optimization, SEO, and your first page of Google is usually filled with just secondary sources.
Right.
So Google's trying to find a way through news stories and highlighting the ones that all these agencies are pulling information from, the original first-hand report.
I also think that that's part of fact-checking, which is important. I know that Media Smarts Canada has now come out with a tool that they created. It's a free tool to help adults and younger people fact-check things that they're reading online as well, to check the veracity of them. So, you know, for those who are watching, if you go to Media Smarts Canada, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can access their tool that they help to do fact-checking. So, I mean, important in today's world that we're doing that. And this is another good step, right?
Yeah, this is really good. It's just, you know, it's so an original source doesn't get misinterpreted or misquoted. You can hopefully, as consumers, more easily access
where the source started.
Yeah, which is really good.
Yeah, for sure.
Next news story is
concerning.
Apple and Meta gave user data to hackers who used forged legal requests, who were impersonating law enforcement, and they were getting information from these companies who thought they were legitimately law enforcement.
Yeah, this one's a concern to me. And the reason it's a concern to me is because I think that this is now going to cause the law enforcement portals to become more cautious in how they're releasing information, because people were spoofing themselves to get the information, which could mean in certain circumstances, police response to an emergency situation maybe could take a little bit longer to get to, right? So,
or maybe too late.
Yeah, or maybe even too late. So I guess this one did catch me by surprise.
Most law enforcement requests to social media are through warrants, and they're usually not emergency situations.
But there are emergency situations that the law enforcement portals are specifically designed for.
Yeah,
right?
in order to expedite the situation, because social media doesn't want to be the ones that are stalling an emergency, potentially life-threatening situation, because that's bad for business.
And I teach law enforcement how to use those portals. And usually when you're using the reporting portals, you require a case number from the department, your email address from the department, as well as a contact phone number. Well, so I think what you're going to see, and all those can be spoofed.
In the reports, as suggested, is that they were taking compromised police logins and using those.
So I think the way around this is the only way that these vendors are going to be able to fix that is now if somebody's using the law enforcement portal and I got a case number, department number, and a phone number. Let's say it's from the Victoria Police Department, my old department. What I would do at Google is, okay, Google Victoria Police Department, Victoria, British Columbia. Here's the phone number. Make a quick phone call to Victoria. Hi, Victoria Police Department. It's Apple emergency portal phoning. Do you have a Staff Sergeant Laura who's working with your department? And if you do, can I speak to him, please? Just to confirm. So that in and of itself is going to extend the time needed in an emergency situation.
Yeah, I think I've seen some people online talk about why wasn't this exploited earlier. I mean, I guess there is a natural deterrent because impersonating law enforcement in itself is a federal crime. Yeah. So I guess, do we hold law enforcement responsible for this data breach?
No, I don't think we hold law enforcement responsible for it. You mean, do you hold social media platforms responsible for this? Right?
Well, I mean, they got breached, right? And
then I think it's like anything else. You don't know it until you don't know it. So, Apple, who would have thought? I mean, like it or not, this is a human hack, right? This is kind of social engineering. It's not the true hardware software hack. This is more of a social engineering that took place. So now that it's being identified, now's the opportunity for these vendors to change the protocols that they have in place to confirm, right? And so, like it or not, it's the vendor's response. It's not the law enforcement's response. It's the vendor's responsibility to ensure that whoever they're releasing their information to is actually who they say they are, which now means it's going to, this is what
But is it also the social media's fault because they were convinced by
that's what
someone
I said. It's
who
their
was
fault.
Who was basically committing a federal offense?
It's their responsibility because they're the ones that are releasing the information, right? And the person who was doing it was creating a criminal offense both in Canada and the United States for pretending to be law enforcement, no doubt about it. But still, they're the ones who released the information. And what kind of fact checking did they do to ensure that the person that they sent the information to was in fact who they said they were? So that's why I think this incident, this reporting, what is going to cause Apple and all the other vendors who have police emergent portals in place is to take a little bit more time to do a confirmation that in fact before they release the information confirming that the person is from law enforcement.
Yeah, the only way to do that is to see which department they come from and then do an actual phone call. Don't rely on the phone number they give you in the application.
Because that can be spoofed too, right?
Yeah.
So you'd have to Google the police department on Google to say, okay, Victoria Police Department, here's the actual, do the two phone numbers match? Okay, that's a pretty good indicator, probably the same person. But just in case, because let's phone it, make sure, right? So,
last news story is Apple finally lets apps like Netflix use their own subscription payment services. Now, we've talked about this previously on the show before on how there have been many court cases around Apple's dominance over their app store procedures. So, traditionally, if you wanted to subscribe on Netflix and do it through your phone, you would have to use Apple's payment systems through the App Store.
And they took a cut.
Apple would take a percentage between 15 to 30%. Now, some apps...
So therefore, if I was paying for, let's say, Netflix via Apple, I would be paying 15 to 30% more if I did it through the Apple platform.
Some companies increase their price on Apple in order to account for the Apple tax.
But still, it's a little bit more expensive if I do it that way compared to connecting with them directly and ordering it from them.
Some companies did take the hit.
Right.
They ate the cost in order to keep the prices similar. But the companies didn't like that.
Yeah.
So now, after various lawsuits have been filed and completed, one such in Japan, Apple is now letting apps under the reader category, whatever that means, to basically allow consumers.
What the hell is a reader category?
Like you read content.
Okay.
It's like a subscription type of. That's how they kind of define it.
All right.
So previously they had that available, but it was against the rules of the App Store to have an app link outside the App Store to pay for a subscription.
But now they allow it.
Now they allow it.
Just in Japan, though? Do they allow it elsewhere?
No, that's where the court case was happening, and there's court cases happening all across North America. So in order
the first domino has fallen in
Yeah.
Japan, and the thinking is it's going to fall every place else, like Canada, the U.S. as well.
lawsuits are already succeeding on this, and they've already loosened their rules because of previous lawsuits, and now they're working even more on this.
Makes sense.
So this is important because now apps can link you to their own subscription model.
Now, I imagine that as soon as you do that, Apple will probably give a warning saying you're leaving their ecosystem, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Apple does have pop-up warnings and saying, hey, are you sure you really want to do this?
Yeah.
You know, it's under Apple's protection. If you go to this website, put your contact information and payment details. But I mean,
so maybe you want to stay on our website and pay 15% more.
Again, some companies eat the cost. Right. Some will increase their. Twitch, for example, a Twitch sub on iOS costs more than the actual website because Twitch accounts for the Apple tax, so they charge more in order to get their
pound of flesh.
Yeah. So this is important for consumers because Apple may no longer get their cut.
So what's your recommendation?
If it's an app you trust, like your Netflix, your Disney Pluses, your Amazon Primes, like the mainstream apps,
right?
Now they can link to a website. But if you're using, say, a fraudulent app, an app that is mimicking or pretending to be something legitimate, they too can now link you outside the App Store to a subscription service. So there is some risk.
Buyer beware.
And that's obviously Apple's whole thing is, well, you got these fraudulent apps who are going to make people spend money outside the App Store, and Apple can't help you because you didn't pay through Apple, so we can't refund you.
Buyer beware. Interesting.
But you might be able to get your subscriptions at a monthly cost cheaper.
I don't disagree with this. Again, I think it's just, it's starting to break up these big vendors of being the behemoths that they are to be able to control everything and, take their pound of flesh from the smaller companies, right? So I don't necessarily disagree with this. However, with the convenience comes vulnerability. So yeah, as soon as you leave the Apple platform, you could be hitting maybe a phishing site that you thought was real but isn't, and as a result of that, you have some vulnerability. So, buyer beware.
But hey, if you get your subscription service at a cheaper price,
15% cheaper,
assuming the company does increase artificially to account for the tax. But hey, I mean, that's good for consumers all around.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's our show.
That's our show.
Thank you all so much, and we'll see you all next week.
See you next week, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe.